Hello, True Health Seeker, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Learn True Health podcast. You're going to love today's interview. I would love for you to join my new membership that I've spent the last 4 months creating. I've filmed a bunch of wonderful videos, and every week I upload new videos teaching you how to cook in a way that heals your body, and also cook and prepare food in a way that your kids will love, your spouse will love. It's delicious food, but it is whole foods in that there's no processed foods, minimally processed, and it tastes delicious. So if you want to learn some amazing recipes, even if you could just improve your health by adding more nutrition in the form of food to your life, please come check out the Learn True Health Home Kitchen. I would love to see you there. The community so far is loving it. One of our members said that within 5 days of applying some of the things that she learned in the membership, her chronic headaches went away, and that she noticed she had more energy and she was actually feeling like she could sleep at night. Come join the Learn True Health Home Kitchen and learn how to use food as your medicine to eat delicious food that also heals your body. Go to learntruehealth.com/home kitchen. That's learntruehealth.com/home kitchen. You can join as a monthly member. It's $9.97 for a whole month. You can come check it out. You can join as an annual member and use the coupon code LTH for a big discount. Come learn how to make delicious food that is also healing for your body. learntruehealth.com/home kitchen. I hope to see you there. Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 414. I am so excited for today's guest. This has been a long time in the making. Lynne McTaggart, I have wanted to interview you for a really long time, and our schedules finally aligned. Today's the day. I'm so excited. A really good friend of mine who's a mental health counselor about a year ago wrote me a text saying, "You have to interview this woman. I just finished her book. It's life-changing. Oh my gosh, this is amazing." And I really take her opinion seriously because she's a mental health counselor and she's really grounded in what works, what doesn't work. You know, she has to be. And so she actually, after reading your book, The Power of Eight, she owns a clinic, and she runs a clinic. About 80% of her clientele are there to end alcohol and substance abuse. And so she does individual therapy, and she has therapists underneath her as well. And she also has group therapy. And so most of her clientele is there to end addiction. And she immediately started using the tools that she learned from your book, The Power of Eight, in her group sessions. So when they all came together 2 or 3 times a week to do their group therapy for ending their substance abuse addiction or healing it, all the things she learned from your book, she started doing with them and started seeing some fantastic results. And then she started doing it to shift things in her personal life. And I'd get a text, "Okay, at 9 in the morning, we're all going to put this intention out there together." And so we started this intention circle, which was so great. So finally you're here on the show. I think that your tools are so relevant and for everyone listening. So I'm very, very excited for us to learn from you today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be with you, Ashley.
Awesome. Absolutely. Now, here's another example of serendipity. I just texted my godmother and I said, and I just felt this urge. I don't normally tell her who I'm interviewing. I just felt the urge to tell her. And I said, I can't believe it. I'm so excited. I'm finally interviewing Lynne McTaggart today. And my auntie, I call her my auntie, she wrote back, "You're not going to believe this. I'm holding her book in my hand." And I've never talked to my aunt about you at all. And she said, "I can't believe it. I'm holding her book, The Power of Eight, right now in my hand." And I said, "Yeah, exactly. I just knew it. Something in me knew." new to tell her, and so she's really excited. So she's gonna text me a question for you while
Brilliant.
we're doing our interview. But this is how exciting it is. Finally, I have you on the show. All my listeners want to achieve better health emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, energetically. All my listeners want a better life for themselves and their family. And this is something that you teach people. You're considered an intention guru, and it's almost like learning how to master the ability to manifest. And I'm so excited to dive right into this. But before we do, I'd love to hear a bit about your backstory so that we really understand what happened in your life that led you to become this best-selling author of teaching people how to control their thoughts in a way that manifests what they want in life.
Well, I mean, I never set out to do this. My background is investigative reporting. So when I started out my, career, Ashley, I was, I broke baby selling rings. I was trying to put bad guys in jail, kind of thing. And I came over to the UK to write a book, and at that point it was a biography of one of the Kennedy sisters, and I fell in love with the place, never left. But in at that time, which was my early 30s, I got ill and I didn't know what was wrong with me, and I went from very conventional doctors to the very outer rim of alternative doctors, and nobody could tell me what was wrong with me. Now, it turned out I had a faulty microbiome. Nothing, no big deal these days. But back in the early 80s, it was. So I finally realized if I was going to get better, I was going to have to research this myself. So I researched what I thought I had. And then I researched the right doctor to work with me, to heal me. And he was a pioneering nutritional doctor, a medical doctor who was not using drugs anymore. He was using supplements. He was using food and supplements as medicine. And we got me better. And I was so impressed by this that I probably got pretty boring on the subject. And my husband sort of turned to me one day and he said, "Don't tell me, tell the world." And so we started a little newsletter then called What Doctors Don't Tell You. This was 30 years ago. We carried on, and we still carried on. It's now an international magazine. We run the one in America and the one in the UK. We also have its sister publication called Get Well, and a Get Well show, an exhibition, a health expo that we just had in London. So in the course of doing this work, and when we started the newsletter, we decided we want to show people what's really proven to work in alternative medicine. So I kept coming across, when I was doing research, very good spiritual studies of spiritual healing. And I kept thinking to myself, wait a minute, if you can have a thought and send it to someone else and make them better, that completely undermines everything we know about how the world works. So I set off on a quest, essentially, to find out what this was. Was this, did we have human energy fields? What was going on? So I persuaded my publisher to let me go on a journey and to write a book without a compass. I had no idea what I was going to find, but they agreed to do a book that I wasn't even sure the content of. And I started talking to scientists in quantum physics, pioneers in consciousness research. And what each of them were telling me was a tiny piece of what together compounded into a completely new science, a new view of the world. So I wrote that up in a book called The Field, which was a bestseller, an international bestseller. And afterward, I realized there was some unfinished business because there was a lot of evidence in there that actually thoughts are an actual something with the capacity to change matter. And so the journalist in me was very curious. And I kept thinking, well, what are we talking about? Are we talking about, a tiny shift of a quantum particle? Or are we talking about curing cancer with your thoughts? So I wrote a book called The Intention Experiment, which was the science of intention, all the science about the power of your thoughts. But it was also an invitation to take part in an experiment. I wanted to do this and, you know, test this in the biggest possible way. And I started thinking about it. I knew a lot of scientists in consciousness research, leading scientists working at prestigious universities like Princeton, Penn State, University of Arizona, University of California. And I also had lots of readers because the field was in 30 languages. So I kept thinking, well, if I put them together, I'm going to have the biggest global laboratory in the world. So we did. And we would set up these well-controlled experiments with scientists. And every so often, I would invite my readers to all send the same thought to that target. And to be honest, Ashley, I did not think it was going to work. I thought maybe we'd have some very subtle effect. But we did. It did work. It really worked. I mean, we've run 33 experiments, everything from trying to make seeds grow faster to trying to purify water to lowering violence in war-torn areas and to even trying to heal somebody of post-traumatic stress disorder. Of those 33, 29 have shown positive, measurable, mostly significant effects. There's no pharmaceutical drug out there that has that kind of track record. But it was really the small group thing came about because I was trying to figure out how to start running workshops in this. This was back in 2008. And I wasn't really sure how to scale down what I was learning in the intention experiments. So I was kicking it around with my husband one day, and I said, well, I don't know. Maybe I'll just put people in groups of 8 or so and have them send healing intention to a member of the group with a health challenge. And he, being a good headline writer, said, I love it, the power of 8. And that is how it started, just completely by accident. We did this in Chicago, our first workshop, put people in groups of 8 or so, had them send healing intention to a member of the group with a health challenge. Again, I didn't think it was really going to work. I thought it was going to be a little feel-good effect, like relaxing, having your back massaged or something like that. But that's not what happened. Next day, when people came in to talk about how it had been for them the day before in the workshop, they said things like this. I have cataracts and they're 80% better. I have a very bad knee from arthritis and I'm walking normally today. I have IBS and it feels like it's cleared. I have depression and I feel lighter and better today. I feel like it's gone. And, on and on and on it went. And I didn't believe it. I really didn't believe it. I thought, oh, well, this is a placebo effect. But I have now seen this happen in thousands of people where there have been healings in an instant or healings over time with a Power of 8 group.
That is amazing. I love that your husband came up with the name. That was some divine intervention to come up with that. So you didn't do experiments where we did a group of 6 and a group of 10 and we found out that 8 was the best.
No, it doesn't have to be 8. As I say, that was just me plucking a number out of the air. I mean, we have had groups of 6. We've had groups of 12. It doesn't need 8. 8 is kind of a Goldilocks figure, Ashley. It's not too big and it's not too small. But it works with 6 or 5. It works with 12. I think more than 12, it gets a little unwieldy. It's just the point is a group, a small group of any size.
You said that thoughts can change matter, and you saw it in large groups of people. Did you do any experiments where just one person, where you saw significant changes in something with one person's thoughts?
Well, I mean, there are plenty of studies of that, and they're all in my book, The Intention Experiment, of individuals sending intention to everything from bacteria to plants to single-celled organisms to full-fledged human beings. And they've been able to change things. There's no question. There's huge evidence of that. It's without a doubt now. But I was interested in the power of groups. I
Mm-hmm.
figured, well, if one person has that power, does it get magnified in a group? That was the other thing that really intrigued me. So that's really why I wanted to do the intention experiment. I wanted to see, what if there are thousands? What happens? And with the intention experiments, we've had everything from 3,000 people to 25,000 people participating.
This reminds me of what happened in DC several years ago where they meditated for peace and that the crime rates dropped significantly during that summer. Is
Hmm.
this is the kind of experiments you were doing where you were taking many people with a single focus and then you would see that it actually got results. Why is that? Is it that we're all part of a morphic field? Is it that our thoughts really do create reality and matter is an illusion? Like, why is it that a group could get together and change reality?
Well, first of all, the studies you're talking about, which were done by the transcendental meditation people, were very good studies, well controlled. What they were looking at was just the effect of passive meditation. So the people
Mm.
who were part of that, what they looked at was, and they did it with 48 cities around America, Washington, D.C. was one of them. They wanted to see what would happen if there were a critical mass of meditators meditating. And they found when they reached a certain critical mass, the crime rate would go down. Now, these were not people intending for lowering violence. These were people just
Mm.
meditating. And they essentially, their theory, and that's really all we could call it, is that it creates a change in the field. When there are lots of people meditating, it really changes and calms things in the field. I don't know about that. There certainly are studies. Their studies are very good. But the why for them, I can't really speak about. What I can talk about is what we did, which was a very highly focused thought. So our people weren't meditating. They were in a state of hyper awareness, hyper focus, which is the state I try to get people in with intention. It's not a quiescent state, it's a state of a high degree of focus. And I have them hold a particular thought. Our intention is that we will lower violence in St. Louis, Missouri, in the fairground section of St. Louis, Missouri, by at least 10%. Something very, very specific. And we've done this 7 times now with violence lowering. We've done intention in war-torn areas like Sri Lanka and Afghanistan. And we've also done it in very highly violent places like Washington, D.C., a section of Washington, D.C., and also a section of St. Louis, Missouri, which is officially the most violent place in America.
Mm.
And with that study, we worked with a team of scientists. One of them was a noted statistician in consciousness research called Dr. Jessica Utz from the University of California. And she examined 3 years worth of data around St. Louis as a whole and also the area we were focusing on, which was the most violent part of St. Louis, the fairground area. And so we looked at both property crime and actual crime, violent crime. And she found that, that the crime rate had been going up and up and up in all areas of St. Louis, particularly fairground. But from 6 months onward, after our intention, property crime continued to go up in St. Louis as a whole. Violent crime, St. Louis as a whole, continued to go up. Property crime and fairground continued to go up, but violent crime, the focus of our intention, went down by about 43%.
Wow.
So, and we've done 7, and all 7 have shown measurable, documented lowering of violence.
Was it advertised? Did people in that area know that this was happening? Or was it completely like oblivious to the people in those areas that this was going on?
Yeah, we didn't advertise it to the St. Louis people. I mean, we let our community and other communities in the, in consciousness, that we were doing it and invited them to be part of it. But we didn't let St. Louis know about it.
Mm-hmm.
So what is this? Well, I think that there's a lot of things going on. I think there is, certainly there is a power in thoughts. There's almost like a psychic internet that gets created. I mean, I give you an example of that with my intention experiment. One of the early ones we were doing, trying to make seeds grow faster. We were working with the University of Arizona. They would get 4 sets of 30 seeds, A, B, C, and D, as they were called. They would photograph each set, send me the photographs. And when I was speaking in a particular area, we would do a new study. And so my first place that I was speaking was in Sydney, Australia. They were in Tucson, Arizona with the seeds. So they sent me the photos with the audience. We chose randomly one of the 4 sets, didn't tell the scientists which ones, sent intention to that set of seeds, didn't tell the scientists which ones. Let them then told them we were done. They planted the seeds, and 5 days later, after they'd measured all 4 sets of seeds to see how high they grew, did we unblind the study and tell them, well, actually, we sent intention to seeds A, or whichever one it was. And we ran that study 6 times. Every single time, the seeds sent intention grew significantly higher than the controls. One time, twice as high. Now, unpack this for a second. That first study, we're in Sydney, Australia. The seeds are in Tucson, Arizona, 8,000 miles away.
Wow.
And the audience isn't sending intention to the seeds itself. They're sending intention to a photograph of the seeds. Nevertheless, we had an effect. So that's what I'm talking about with some sort of weird psychic internet. But the even more interesting thing, that's interesting, pretty amazing, but not the really interesting part of the story. The more interesting part is what happened to the participants. Because once we started doing peace experiments in 2008, we started sending questionnaires, surveys to the people who would participate. And we got thousands of responses back where people said things like this. I've made up with my estranged relative. I'm getting along so much better with my wife. That boss of mine, that horrible boss of mine, is suddenly being so nice to me. I am in love with everyone I come in contact with. That was about half of the people said that. That was the most. They were basically talking about hugging strangers in the street. There was this incredible change in them that was a kind of, their lives became more peaceful, more loving, more connected. And so that's the thing, that rebound effect, that mirror effect was what started to really interest me.
It's as if they plugged into a different internet, like you said, like they're plugging into this internet where the intention and the energy is about love and peace. And so their own personal, like the morphic field they were living in, the life they were like, the goldfish bowl that they were living in has changed. They took themselves out of the petty, the angry, like whatever they were in, and they put themselves in a different vibrational state. And so then they started seeing their entire world in a different way. It changed their perception.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That is brilliant. Now, in your book, The Power of Eight, you teach people and teach groups how to do this. What about individuals? So I want to talk about groups. I want to talk about individuals because individuals are listening to this. And maybe some people, like introverts, would be shy to go find a group of people to start, doing this with at first. And they want to build up their confidence by doing something alone. Can people practice what you teach alone and then go find a group, or should they just like go find a group because that's so much more powerful?
Well, I would recommend that they find a group, and it doesn't have to be a group that's physical. You can meet virtually, and on my website, lynnmctaggart.com/forum, you can sign up to create, to either join an existing group, and there are thousands of them going, or you can create one and advertise one in your time zone and just say, hey, I'm looking for people to do a Power of Eight group with. Yes, you can practice the rudimentaries of intention, but it's the power of the group. And I'll tell you what the real secret sauce is and why you do need a group. And that is because for so many people, when they really, if they're stuck in their lives, the way that they get off of that is by getting off of themselves and sending intention to someone else. That's why a group, small groups, are so powerful, because I've seen this over and over and over again. When I first started noticing that this was going on, I started looking at it from different ways, trying to understand this, because I didn't believe it. And at one point, I decided to put people in groups, have them follow a course of mine for a whole year. And I would put them in groups after they'd gone through some teaching with me over 6 weeks. And I'd study them. I would monitor their progress over an entire year. Now, we had some amazing things, and we continue to do so. With that first group, there were 250 in the first group. About 150 continued to meet regularly, week after week after week. Of those 150, pretty much 100% of them had major life transformations.
Wow.
We had Allison, who had vitiligo and started repigmenting, and Trudy, who regained most of her hearing. She had hearing loss. We had Mitchell Dean, who was a psychologist who suffered from his own suicidal thoughts. He had suicidal depression, and nothing had worked. He was an integrative psychologist. But when he put it out to his group to help him find the path to healing, after they did an intention for him, he was compelled to go to a Chinese herbalist who wanted to test his liver filtration systems. And he found out that one of them was blocked. As soon as that was unblocked, his depression lifted.
Yes.
So we had amazing stories like this. People who were in financial straits suddenly get this incredible ongoing windfall of money. Extraordinary people stuck in their jobs, like Melissa, who in her 50s ends up getting this new dream job. But some people in the beginning were stuck, like Andy. Now, Andy was a very talented marketing person and coach. She had sold her gift store, and she was going through a divorce. And she had 2 small children, so she really needed a job. She couldn't find a job, no matter what they were doing, her group's intention, all of this stuff. She was stuck. So I went through all kinds of things with her, and I finally just said, Andy, get off of yourself. And I had a particular person in mind for her to focus her intention on. There was a young boy called Luke who was 15, and he had just broken up with his first serious girlfriend when he was in a fit of adolescent angst. He threw himself off a 40-foot structure onto hard ground. Now, Luke broke every bone in his body, had nerve damage, brain damage, and his stepfather and his mother didn't think he was going to live, according to what the doctors were telling them. So they wrote to me and said, can you put him on an intention circle? So I asked this master class that had been formed with these groups to all do a healing vigil for Luke on 3 successive Sundays, while his parents kept a running commentary of what was going on with him. Now, Luke ended up healing in record time. Within a few weeks, he was whizzing around on a wheelchair. Within a few more weeks, he went home against every prognosis of the doctors. And now he's a healthy 18-year-old boy.
Wow.
So amazing. Was that down to us or good doctoring? Or maybe a combo of both? Who knows? But what was really fascinating is what happened to Andy. Because Andy, the moment she got off of herself and started focusing on Luke, she gets a call out of nowhere from someone she doesn't even know offering her the perfect job. And that happened over and over and over again, to the point where I started realizing that the real secret of this, the real reason why people are getting better, is this thing of altruism. You know, altruism's like a bulletproof vest. People, the science shows you that people who do things for other people, no matter how slight, live longer, happier, healthier lives. And if you have an illness and you help somebody with the same illness, you're more likely to get better. Even if you're a volunteer, you're more likely to have a healthy life. You're more likely to have, a longer life. I mean, it's really extraordinary, the science behind it.
What's the difference between the power of eight, or this group intention, the system? You've developed a system that has proven time and time again to work for the intended target, but also for everyone doing it, which is great. What's the difference between that and prayer? Like, you go to church on Sunday and the whole church prays for someone.
Mhm.
What's the difference?
Well, I think it's different. It's a secular system, first of all. And secondly, you're not praying to a supreme being where you basically say to God, you decide, thy will be done, is what we say in church.
Mm.
You decide, essentially. With intention, this is a very specific request to the universe. This is what I'd like, please. And also, there is the energy, the something, the alchemy that goes on in this group. Now, everybody, we just had a health show in London, Olympia, and I did a talk, Get Well show, and I put people into groups of 8 and let them experience that. And people talked about this extraordinary buzzing energy they were feeling. And I'll give you an example. A few months ago, I did this at a conference, and a woman, I swear to you, Maya, young woman who had some sort of idiopathic paralysis from the neck down that occurred, that was tragic because she's a dancer. She was in and out of this paralysis, and when she came to the show, she was in a wheelchair, paralyzed from the neck down, and the group did it for her, and she described this extraordinary buzzing, this energy, this that filled her with such gratitude, with such force, that she felt, I can't keep this for myself. So she started intending to send some of that out to one of her relatives who was ill. Anyway, the upshot is, when we were calling on people afterward who were raising their hand to say what had happened to them, she put her hand up and she thought to herself, I got to stand. And she stood up and turned around and talked to everybody. It was just astonishing, absolutely astonishing. But it's that group thing. There's a group feeling of oneness that people talk about all the time, that is something much, much bigger than them. Like, they're almost inviting in a power even outside the group. People talk about that all the time. Light behind chairs, the chairs of the circle, light beings there. Someone who had a bad knee and afterward was able to do a deep squat after this 10-minute intention, talked about feeling warm mitts around her knee, even though nobody in the group was holding on to her knee. It's that kind of thing. There's something bigger that gets produced.
You're inviting in healing angels.
I guess you are. Who knows? Look, I've started recognizing that, intention plays a big part of it. Group intention plays a big part of it. The group effect itself. Groups are, as one psychologist called it, a collective effervescence. They have their own amazing effect and power. Altruism plays a huge part in it. Just getting off of yourself. We've seen, what happens with altruism is, when you do something for someone else, it activates a thing in your body called the vagus nerve. It's the longest nerve in your body, and it starts in the neck, winds its way through all of the major organs of your body. And it's kind of a love nerve because it gets activated when we do something good for someone else, like a child in need. When it does, it also makes us feel connected to everyone, even people we are nothing like. We feel more connection with the other.
Hmm.
So there's an extraordinary spiritual side to this that gets activated in a group, and a group that is involved in an altruistic intention.
There are studies that show that people who are depressed and suicidal, when they join a group and volunteer, so dog walking, feeding the homeless, community gardens, that time and time again they see that depression lifts and suicidal thoughts melt away. Joy starts to fill their life, and that people who volunteer live longer. They are happier people and they live longer. So you're explaining one of the physiological reasons why, because it's stimulating the vagus nerve, which um it connects our two brains, because they're saying now that there's like a second brain, which is our gut, that there's so many nerves happening in the gut, and the gut and through the vagus nerve is sending more signals to the brain than the brain is sending back down. So the brain is receiving all this information. We have a an intuition, I believe. We call it like a gut feeling. I think the gut perceives also. And so when we have a really clean and a healthy vagus nerve, we have better digestion. Our serotonin, 25% of our serotonin, I believe, is produced in the gut of a healthy microbiome. So there's joy and happiness, there's better digestion, better absorption of nutrition. And when the vagus nerve's inflamed, they see that people have chronic depression,
Mm-hmm.
and also have developed digestive disorders like IBS. So, so something that is not, we can do something like um, be altruistic, volunteer, join a circle, power of eight group, and uh, and actually have a physiological effect on calming the vagus nerve, which supports our physical health. I love that. I love that we can start to see the actual physical benefits of something mental and emotional, because all the mental and emotional body is connected. We're all connected.
Yes.
That's really
And
cool.
it's just, the amazing thing of it is, as I say, in a group, it's not just the receivers that get healed, it's the senders too. Now, we had with one group, I just organized a group in Denver with the Mile High Church. So we had this group of 8, and one of the members of the group was a guy called Wes. Now, Wes wanted to put himself forward because he suffered from depression, and he'd had this miserable life. He was 65 when I met him, and he was there with the group, and he um, had big hopes and dreams to become a biochemist or a doctor even. He was at university when, in the I think his third year, he got called up to be drafted at a point at the very end of the Vietnam War when there were no more draft deferments for college students. So he ended up going to Vietnam, getting, totally traumatized by the situation,
Mm,
coming home deeply depressed, didn't finish university, um, and his life went down in a downward spiral after that.
mm,
Even when he met the love of his life and married his second wife, she didn't last long. She died of a fast growing cancer.
mm,
So he got to the point by 65 where it was kind of, what's the use? And he, you know, barely could get himself up in the morning. So he was there and he did this whole thing. He wanted to put himself forward, but there was a woman in the group with stage 4 cancer and he thought she was more deserving. So he did that. And that first night, he went to bed and he woke up, and it was almost like Scrooge on Christmas morning, where suddenly he's like this totally different person. He's smiling. He used to avoid people. He's suddenly smiling and saying hi to them. The grass was greener than he'd ever seen it. He had a cup of herbal tea in it. He said it knocked his socks off. All of his senses were really heightened. So then the next night he goes to bed and he has this amazing lucid dream, he said, almost like a vision, where he's meeting his 19-year-old self. They're back at campus, and the 19-year-old self is somehow communicating to him, don't worry, there's still time. And from then, Wes was a totally different person. I mean, he suddenly started doing power walks. He started writing. He started joining classes. He started coming to his church, Mile High Church, and is very active in a Power of Eight group. He's a completely different person after that one 10-minute session.
Oh my gosh, I'm crying right now. I think my favorite thing in the world is hearing about people who felt hopeless and then they had a breakthrough because it's never too late. You know, you are not a lost cause, you're not broken, it's never too late. You can have a better life even if you've been suffering. 'Cause I remember feeling so sick. In my 20s, I was so sick. I just didn't want to live anymore at times because I felt like a prisoner trapped in my own body. I was suffering so horribly. And I was able to use natural medicine to overcome it. And that's why one of the reasons why I do this show is to help people who are suffering like me. There is a way to heal yourself, and the road sometimes is long, but sometimes it's short. You know, sometimes you do something like
Yes.
join a Power of Eight group and you have these amazing results. But there's
Yes.
always hope. There's always something there for you to learn. And, you know, I believe that there's no lost causes, right? So this is
Absolutely.
my favorite kind of story, is hearing of people who triumph, and it's every single person deserves that. Every single person deserves to create the life that they love.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's the thing that's really amazing about it. And when you do see studies of what happens when people do for other people and how that changes them, one of my favorite studies is a study of prayer. And it
Mm.
looked at a group of 400 people with depression. And they put them into two groups. And one group were the people who were going to get prayer for them. And the other group of 200 were going to be people who were going to give the prayer. And so they carried out the study and afterward measured the effects. Now, the people who got the prayer did really well. They improved, but nowhere near as much as the people who had given the prayer. They were off the charts. So that was, I think, one of those interesting things. And also another study of people looking at people who have what we'd consider the good life, you know, all the money in the world, everything that they want, go on a lot of holidays, have a lot of, material things. When they looked at their immune system markers, a group of researchers, they found they had terrible immune systems. These are people who are going to die of any one of the number of degenerative diseases, you know, heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, etc. They were going to drop like flies. They look like at another group who weren't as affluent, but who were living a life of service, of doing for other people. Those people had robust immune systems. They were going to live forever. So there's another example of the power of getting off of yourself and doing for other people. It's really extraordinary.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love it. My aunt texted her question.
Okay.
She says, "So I'm in a group based on her book, The Power of Eight. There are 8 people meeting once a week on Zoom. We are into our third week and plan to do 8 weeks for all 8 people. Each week we let each person in the group say what they intend for their intention for themselves for this week, and then we pick one person after that who we'll all focus on. Figure out what intention will suit that person's issue the best, and we all repeat silently to ourselves for 10 minutes. The same intention for this one person. We meditate on it. My question is, at the beginning of the call, is it a good idea for each one of us to tell our own personal intention first, or is it better to only focus on the one person's intention throughout the whole hour together?"
Well, you can talk about your intentions, your personal intentions, but if you're doing it for an hour, I wouldn't try to do everybody in the group in that 1 hour. Sometimes it's good to just send, and sometimes it's good to receive. And so if you've got an hour, you might want a little time to talk about things after each intention and to break and have time. And so having about 3 people to 4 people being the targets of intention would be a good idea at most in an hour. And you'd want them to talk about themselves, what's going on with them. And then everybody share some feedback back afterward, because some of the stuff that I talk about is also having visualizations of success, very strong visualizations, not just holding the statement and bringing it down to your heart, but also holding visualizations of success.
Maybe you could walk us through what a session looks like when so that the listener went and got 7 other people together. Walk us through what it looks like, and of course they'll get your book because they'll want to dive in deeper. But for those listening today that are like really jazzed to just want to go try it, can you walk us through step by step what we should do with a group of 7 other people?
Sure. I mean, it doesn't have to be 8, as I say. You can be on Skype or Zoom or a conference call, or you can be meeting in person. You design a very specific intention statement together. It helps to have one person be the leader stroke timekeeper. So one person gets nominated as the recipient. Everybody else is the senders. You decide together on the intention statement. Make it very specific. If you want to heal the big toe of somebody's right foot, say our intention is that Jane Doe will be healed of all pain in her big toe of her right foot, that kind of thing. And you then start breathing together. You then formulate the intention, bring it down to your heart, send it out to the person. I'm just giving you the big broad strokes. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of details. In fact, there are 13 keys to intention mastery. I talk about a number of them in my book, The Power of 8, and also in the intention experiment. And I teach these very in depth and lots of other things about intention in master classes. But these are the broad strokes. So we take it down to our hearts. We send it out. The person receiving just opens up their hearts to receive. I say hold it for just 10 minutes because sometimes people aren't as proficient in focusing, and it requires a high degree of focusing on the outcome, that person being healthy and well in every way, imagining them, running around or being, blooming with good health, and hold it. And you don't need to do more than 10 minutes. Lots of people do things for hours. You don't need it. We've seen so many healings in an instant, basically. And then you slowly come out. The timekeeper says time is up. You slowly come back in onto the call. And then it's good to have some feedback. What did the receiver feel? What did the senders feel? What did they visualize, etc.?
So in one call, you could, like you said, you could do 3 or 4 people if you wanted to.
Yeah, I wouldn't try to do all 8. I mean, because you wouldn't have enough time.
Right. Right, because it sounds like it would be about 20 minutes per person if you were really intentional with the time.
And do understand that people get healed to where the senders just as much as the receivers, in some cases more so. Remember Wes, he
Right.
wasn't a receiver, he was a sender. And his life got changed in those 10 minutes.
This makes me think about hurricanes, where we've seen them like veer off all of a sudden, and there was no explanation as to why, and everyone in Florida is like, and everyone in the around Florida is just like intending for it to move. And then there are other times where people are expecting worst case scenarios, and I wonder, have you seen negative things happen where if a group of people believe something really bad's going to happen, does that also could we also create something negative?
Oh yeah, there's a huge batch of research about negative intention, and I'd like to tell you, Ashley, that positive intention is more powerful than negative intention, but I can't. It works just as well. If you think about it, I mean, Qigong masters use a thing called destroying mind to overcome the opponent if they're doing a kind of a fight with them. And that works very powerfully. There are other situations where, they've done very well controlled studies of people sending negative intention to anything from bacteria to plants to all kinds of things like that. And they have a very powerful effect. They've even done studies where they do a trade. They do a positive thing for a while, then a negative thing for a while, positive thing, and it creates a kind of zigzag effect. So yeah, we can have negative intention too. So people expecting the worst. It's like that old I think it's an old Buddhist story of somebody coming to a new town and meeting a Buddha and saying, so what's it like in this new town that they were about to move in? And the Buddha says to them, well, what was it like in the last town? And they said, oh, it was terrible. People were so unfriendly. And he said, well, yeah, they're going to be unfriendly in the next place. And then somebody else comes along and they say, so we're moving into this town. What are the people like here? And he says, well, what were they like in the last town? They were so lovely. They were so friendly. They were wonderful. And he said, well, the people here in this next town are going to be lovely too. So, a lot of it is depending on your point of view and what you do. I've actually worked with a group of intenders in Florida trying to move one of the hurricanes, and it certainly missed that area. It was aiming for it, and it missed it. Did we do this? Short answer, who knows? But it's interesting, and it seems to happen quite a lot.
Oh, that's so brilliant. Now you have an intention masterclass. I believe it started in January. Can people still join?
Well, I'm due to do the fifth one on Saturday. These are all recorded, so if people were really desperate to join, we could probably fit a few people in. They would get the first 4 sessions if they joined this week, and they could join the 5th session, which is all about how to protect yourself from negative intention. They could join it and be part of it. Now, what happens is they get 6 live webinars from me, and these are also recorded if you miss them, if you've started late too. And we are putting people in groups of 8 or so. We put them into more so that there will always be 8 on their calls. And then we encourage them to meet weekly with their group once my 6 are finished. And then I send them weekly challenges, advice, guidance, and I also have a system to monitor their progress, every person's progress on the masterclass. And they get 4 catch-up calls with me where I teach them some more through the year, and they get to answer questions. We have a private Facebook page where they can ask more questions, and there's a lot of feedback that goes on. So the real work happens with the groups. But they learn a lot from me about using intention for relationships, using intention to become a better receiver of other people's intention, the 13 keys, and so forth, and how to be really successful in a Power of 8 group.
I know that you also teach people how, if they feel like their choices are not in their own control, that you teach people how to use their thoughts to change that behavior. Because some people feel like, oh, I wish I could stick to this way of eating, but I can't control going through the drive-through, or I, as an example, or I keep wanting to go to the gym, but I just can't make it there, or, it's like they want to do something, but then they feel like their behavior is not in their control. And that's something that you teach as well, as how people can overcome that.
Yeah, well, I mean, what we also teach is, and I run a retreat with my husband on this, and we're going to be in amazing place in Italy in the Piedmont area, staying in a castle. And we're also going to be visiting Damanhur, that amazing spiritual community that's been considered one of the 8 wonders of the world because it has these extraordinary subterranean cathedrals in there. Very, very sacred place. I've been working a lot with intention in sacred spaces, and some of the science does show that intentions seem to work faster and better when there's been a lot of sacred work in certain areas. So we do that,
Mm.
which is really interesting. But we also work on healing the past through the power of eight, because my husband has a lot of work about how the past becomes you and lives through you and creates the you present to the world. And we combine that with a lot of intention, time travel intention. And we work with people and help them get over some of the big and small traumas that have limited them in their lives from manifesting the life of their dreams. So this year we're going to be going for, we only do one retreat a year. We're going in early October. So there's going to be more up about that on my website too.
That sounds beautiful. What do you mean by time? I mean, I think I know what you mean, but I'd love for you to explain it. Time travel intention.
Well, we actually use intention through various techniques to go back to moments of trauma and
Mm-hmm.
and essentially erase that tape. We don't erase what happened, but we erase the tape. So we erase the footprint that is limiting you. So it's quite a complex technique, but essentially it really means what we are doing is getting rid of that emotional trauma, the emotional footprint of it.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Well, I love the work that you do. I would love to have you back on the show to dive deeper into these topics. I think this is sort of the manual we should have been born with to learn how to use this tool in between our ears and our heart. You know, we're starting, all the science now is finally starting to prove that this exists, that we can affect with our thoughts, can affect reality. I just finished an interview with a woman that just published a documentary called Superhuman, and the entire documentary is following experiments proving that thought affects the world. And so it's wonderful to now interview you and get that you know, many people, including yourself, many scientists are all working together around the world to prove that there's something. Thought is like an invisible arm that we have. It's like
Exactly.
it's not only a sense, because our we can perceive, you know, what people get intuition or psychic abilities, but that it also, our consciousness also affects. So it receives, but it also puts out. And that in this documentary, she was able to, they were at, I think, Stanford, and she was able to, within 10 seconds, just using her consciousness, just intention, she changed the conductivity of DNA. And then they did another experiment. Within 30 seconds, she changed the pH, which is increasing the hydrogen in water. Um, and while it was
Yeah.
all hooked up to electrodes, and all kinds of experiments like that, just to show that anyone, you know, she was coming in blind, never done it before, that everyone has this ability, but most
Yes.
people are walking around handicapped because
Yes.
they don't know that they have this ability. And so your books are showing them and teaching them how to use this God-given ability to create a world. We're kind of walking around like children, creating a world chaotically with our thoughts, not really taking responsibility for them, because we don't realize how great of an impact they have on our reality. And so we need to harness this power and focus it towards what we want.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so bring it together, focus it. It's kind of like the difference between um, a sailboat where all the ropes are loose and everything's flapping about and it's just kind of going with the current, versus focusing the sailboat to harness the wind to go where we want it to go. And so we can use your tools to learn how to do that.
I like that. I like the idea of harnessing ourselves. Sounds great.
Yeah. Lynne, your website is lynnmctaggart.com. Of course, the links to everything that Lynne does, including her Intention Masterclass and all her books, are going to be in the show notes of today's podcast at learntruehealth.com. Is there anything that you wanted to make sure you taught today, or anything you'd like to say to wrap up today's interview?
Well, just that I think the power of thoughts really should give you hope. And the power of the group should give you hope because, we in the spiritual community, we think we have to spend years practicing or hours priming ourselves to get into a mystical state. We did brainwave studies with neuroscientists at Life University, one of the largest in the world, chiropractic universities in the world, and they found that during Power of Eight groups, the brainwaves of the participants who were just novice students would change and not look anything like meditation. They resembled Sufi masters during chanting and Buddhist monks during ecstatic prayer as measured by the University of Pennsylvania. So my message is just this. You don't need a sweat lodge. You don't need years of walking around on your knees. All you need is a Power of Eight group and a common intention, and it's your passport to the miraculous.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'd love to have you back.
I would love to be back, Ashley. Thanks so much.
Are you looking to optimize your health? Are you looking to get the best supplements at the lowest price? For high quality supplements and to talk to someone about what supplements are best for you, go to takeyoursupplements.com and one of our fantastic True Health coaches will help you pick out the right supplements for you that are the highest quality and the best price. That's takeyoursupplements.com. takeyoursupplements.com. That's takeyoursupplements.com. Be sure to ask about free shipping and our awesome referral program.